Deep in vaults across the United States, there's a treasure worth nearly $1 trillion. But here's the thing. On the official books, it's valued at just a tiny fraction of that. It's a really wild story of history, some bizarre accounting, and a huge debate about the future of money itself. So what exactly is the secret behind America's gold?
Okay, so let's start with a little thought experiment. Imagine the US government has this massive asset on its balance sheet, right? And its official, legally defined value is about $11 billion. That's a lot of money, for sure. But what if I told you that number is basically a work of fiction? Because if you were to take that exact same asset and sell it on the open market today, it would be worth over $900 billion. That is not a typo. That's a difference of like 8,000%. A gap that big just makes you wonder, how is that even possible? Well, that's the secret we're going to unpack right now. So what is going on here? Why are there two totally different numbers for the same thing? Is it some kind of mistake, a conspiracy? The reality, you'll see, is actually way more interesting, and it's a story written deep in our economic history. Well, the answer isn't some big secret plan. It's basically a time capsule. That low official value, the $11 billion, it's a relic. It's an echo from a time when the US dollar worked in a completely different way. It's really the ghost of a monetary system that just doesn't exist anymore. So to really get why that official price is so low, we've got to jump in a time machine and take a quick trip back to the era of the gold standard, a time when dollars and gold were pretty much two sides of the same coin.
And this timeline here, it really shows you how that direct link was just severed, piece by piece. It kicked off during the Great Depression back in 1933, when the government told citizens, nope, you can't trade your dollars for gold anymore. They were trying to stop a total collapse of the banks. Then, jump to 1971, other countries were cashing in their dollars for U.S. gold, so President Nixon just cut the cord completely. And the final nail in the coffin, 1973. That's when Congress just froze the official value for accounting purposes. And believe it or not, that price has not been touched since. And that brings us to this really important term, statutory value. That's the official price, $42.22 per ounce, that was set by that law back in 1973. It is purely, and I mean purely, an accounting number. It has absolutely nothing to do with what an ounce of gold is actually worth today, which, is thousands of dollars. You multiply that old, dusty number by all the ounces the U.S. has, and boom, you get the official $11 billion figure.
So, if the dollar isn't backed by gold anymore, what is it backed by? Well, we now live in the world of fiat currency. And that's just a fancy way of saying our money's value comes from our collective trust and confidence in the government that issues it. It's full faith and credit, not a vault full of shiny metal.
Okay, so if the gold isn't really backing the dollar in the old way, where is all of it? I mean, the U.S. still holds on to about 261 million ounces of the stuff, so where's it all stashed away?
The gold is spread out across a few super secure locations. And yep, the legendary Fort Knox in Kentucky, that's the big one. It holds the lion's share, well over half of the entire reserve. But there are also huge stockpiles at the U.S. Mint facilities in West Point, New York, and Denver, Colorado.
And this chart really just drives that point home. Look at that. Fort Knox alone holds 56% of the entire U.S. gold stock. So when people think of America's gold, they're really, truly thinking about what's sitting inside that one heavily guarded building in Kentucky. So what is all this gold actually doing today? Well, officially, not a whole lot. Its main job is to back some internal IOUs called gold certificates that are held by the Federal Reserve. And a tiny fraction gets used by the U.S. Mint to make special coins for collectors. For the most part, it just sits there.
And that right there brings us to the big modern debate. If we have this massive dormant asset just sitting there, worth nearly $1 trillion on the open market, what should we do with it? This question sparks a fascinating debate with two main and very different schools of thought. First up, should we just sell it? I mean, proponents say, look, sell it at market value and you could make a dent in the national debt, give the government more flexibility. But opponents fire back, arguing that dumping that much gold on the market would create absolute chaos. More importantly, they say it could be seen as a sign of desperation that might seriously damage confidence in the U.S. economy.
And on that debt question, this chart, wow, it really puts things into perspective. I mean, nearly $1 trillion sounds like a magic bullet, right? But when you put it next to a national debt that's over $30 trillion, it suddenly looks like a drop in the bucket. It's just not enough to really move the needle.
Okay, so the other idea is even more radical. Should we go back to a gold standard? Supporters believe it would bring back discipline, control inflation by making it impossible to just print money out of thin air. But skeptics are quick to point out that historically, prices were actually less stable under the gold standard. And they also argue that it would basically handcuff the Federal Reserve, stopping it from being able to fight recessions and high unemployment.
And there's another huge risk they always bring up: deflation. Tying your whole economy's growth to how fast you can dig gold out of the ground can lead to periods of falling prices. Now, cheaper stuff might sound good, but deflation is like an economic poison. It's strongly linked with severe recessions, most famously, the Great Depression itself.
So, with all these heavy arguments on both sides, you might think this is just some theoretical debate for economists, right? Something they argue about over dinner? Not at all. This whole issue is very much alive in the halls of Congress today.
I mean, check this out. These aren't just thought experiments. One recent proposal is demanding a full, independent audit of all the gold, which is something that hasn't happened in decades. And then there's this other wild idea, in a nod to the digital age, a bill that suggests using the gold's real market value to fund the purchase of Bitcoin for a new kind of strategic reserve. So yeah, the conversation is definitely evolving.
Which leaves us with this one giant question. Is this 261 million-ounce stockpile just a shiny relic from a bygone era, best left untouched in its vaults, or is it a powerful, misunderstood financial tool just waiting to play a role in a future we can't even predict yet? The debate over America's $900 billion secret, it seems, is far from over.